Good evening, everyone. Am I audible? Anyone there?
Good evening, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Good can you see the presentation?
Yes, ma'am.
Very good. This is very important topic, and I think this is a revision class. Okay, the primary amenorrhea. This is very important for both theoretical and the clinical point of view. I'm going to start the class because I think it's already a very important topic, that is primary amenorrhea. We all know that amenorrhea means absent of menstruation. So it may be primary, it may be secondary. What do you mean by primary amenorrhea? Just a basic concept is that the bleeding is not started. The patient has never experienced any bleeding event. And in secondary amenorrhea, the patient has experienced a bleeding event followed by absence of menses. But it is a symptom, it is not a disease. We should be aware that it can be physiological or pathological. You can tell me, anybody, what are the causes of physiological amenorrhea? The most common cause. Anybody? No one is
Pregnancy.
answering. Yes, very good. Pregnancy and lactation. Okay. So this is most important. So before going to the evaluation of amenorrhea, we should have to exclude the pregnancy. And pathological amenorrhea, that is maybe divided into primary or secondary amenorrhea, and we will be discussing with primary amenorrhea. So the new guideline says that if there is no menses by the age of 13 years, previously it was 14 years, now the age has been shifted to 13, in the absence of growth or development of secondary sexual characteristics, or if there is no menses by age 15 years, regardless of the presence of normal growth and development of secondary sexual characteristics. So this definition should be very much clear to you. In the presence of normal growth and development of secondary sexual characteristics, no menses by age 15, and if there is absence of growth or development, no menses by age of 13. So this will be regarded as primary amenorrhea. Coming to the classification of amenorrhea, just a plain and simple classification here, according to the cause that may be physiological or pathological, the onset, it may be primary or secondary. According to the hidden or apparent cause, it may be true amenorrhea or cryptomenorrhea. According to the evaluation, it may be physiological, it may be anatomical, or it may be endocrinological. So these classifications, they are complementary to each other. We all know that this diagram, this is very important. You should keep it in mind that whenever a patient comes with an amenorrhea, we have to be visualizing whether it is physiological or pathological. If it is physiological, you have to ask what is the age of the patient. If it is before puberty, it is primary. If it is during pregnancy, during lactation, following menopause, it is secondary amenorrhea, and that is physiological. We should not be very much bothered about it. Coming to the pathological, it may be true amenorrhea or concealed, that is cryptomenorrhea. So true amenorrhea, it may be primary and secondary. We will be discussing later on. Cryptomenorrhea, it comes as a short note, and we should know what do you mean by it and what are the cause of it. It may be congenital, it may be acquired. Coming to the sexual characteristics, why it is important? Because whenever you examine a patient with amenorrhea, you have to check the body mass index of the patient, the age of the patient, as I have discussed, and her secondary sexual characteristics, because it points out that what are the problems lies at the level of the pituitary or hypothalamus or the ovaries or outflow tract or genetic problems. So secondary sexual characteristics in the females basically encompass the hair distribution, the axillary and the pubic hair, the development of the breast and the widening of hips, and broadening of the chest and deepening of the voice. So what is our pattern of growth in females? The most important sign is puberty, and which is depicted by acceleration of the growth. 80% of the growth occurs first in the females, and this is followed by the thelarchy, that is development of the breast buds. and this is followed by adrenarche and pubarche. So this gives rise to the axillary hair and the pubic hair, and then menarche. So when the menarche occurs, the growth spurts becomes very slow, almost nil. So menarche occurs within 2 to 3 years after the initiation of the pubertal changes. So this should be kept in mind. How is the pattern of the development of the sexual characteristics? So we all know that anal staging of breast and pubic hair development. It is classified into 5 types: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You need to know what are the gradings, and type 5 is full development of the breast and adult type hair distribution of the pubic hair onto the medial thigh. And type 1 is just elevation of the papilla only in case of breast, and there is no pubic hair. So it will increase as the stage will increase. You need to know. Now, we all know for cyclical menstruation, we have to have a coordinated action of the hypothalamus, pituitary, ovary, and a patent genital flow tract. If it is not patent, that will be cryptomenorrhea. Okay. So this intactness at all the levels is very much essential to have a regular menses. Any disruption at any level will cause amenorrhea. Now coming to the cause of primary amenorrhea, as we have discussed the compartments, the hypothalamus, the pituitary, the ovaries, and the uterus and outflow tract. So hypothalamus, yes, the most important cause is anorexia, weight loss, psychological stress, functional cause, Kalaman syndrome, or other genetic things. Coming to the pituitary, we all have heard about hyperprolactinemia, damage by radiation or surgeries, infarction, and empty sella syndrome. The ovarian, we most commonly deal with ovarian. It is the most common cause of primary amenorrhea in a young girl, and that is known as gonadal dysgenesis, Turner syndrome. Polycystic ovarian syndrome in early age before menarche is one of the cause, or premature ovarian failure. And it occurs after menarche, but it may occur in a reproductive age woman before the age of 40 years. Coming to the genital outflow tract causes, it may be Mullerian-Rokitansky-Kushner-Hauser syndrome, that is Mullerian agenesis, absent cervix, presence of transverse vaginal septum, imperforate hymen, endometrial receptor defect. So all comes as a short question like imperforate hymen, transverse vaginal septum, or MRKH syndrome, gonadal dysgenesis. So you have to know it very nicely. Adrenal causes, yes, it is rare, but if congenital adrenal hyperplasia is one of the most common cause of primary amenorrhea in young girls, thyroid, juvenile hypothyroidism should be excluded, and others may be testicular feminizing syndrome, 5-alpha reductase deficiency, or chronic liver and kidney disease. So coming to the WHO classification of amenorrhea, and it is classified into group 4. The group is hypogonadotropic hypogonadism. Hypo. This means the hypothalamus is not functioning well, and it results into hypopituitarism, and it results in decrease in the level of FSH and LH, and followed by decrease in the production of the estrogen and the progesterone. So in this group, there will be no endogenous estrogen. If you measure the LSH, FSH levels, it will be normal or low. There will be normal prolactin. There will be no lesion in the hypothalamus. Coming to the group 2 is normogonadotropic anovulation. This means that there is evidence of estrogen production. It is always there, but the FSH and prolactin levels are normal. Group 3 is hypergonadotropic hypogonadism. Means there is a ovarian production is jeopardized. So there will be raised FSH and with gonadal insufficiency or failure. And the group 4 is hyperprolactinemic anovulation. Now the broad classification, we can also classify depending upon the presence or absence of breast with low FSH. 30% incidence is there. There may be resulting in constitutional delay, prolactinoma, the stress, weight loss and anorexia, PCOS, congenital adrenal hyperplasia, Kalaman syndrome, other CNS causes, and others 1%. If there is a normal breast development, We have to think about Mullerian agenesis, androgen insensitivity, constitutional delay, vaginal septum, imperforate hymen. And if there is absent breast development with high FSH, that ovarian failure, it might be normal sex or it may be male type of sex. Abnormal karyotype, that is mosaicism, may be present in 20% of the patients. So, how will you approach a case of primary amenorrhea? Always a thorough history taking, followed by a good physical examination and then supportive investigations. What are the history we should elicit and what are the examinations you should do? The most important history is the menstrual history and the onset of menarche, followed by the sexual history, the development of secondary sexual characteristic by the TNS staging, the exercise, weight loss, previous chronic illness, any illicit drug use, you have to be evaluating it. Previous CNS system regarding the chemoradiation, you have to ask to the patient. Previous pelvic radiation or any vasomotor symptoms, which is important patient with premature ovarian failure. So you have to ask the history and in your mind you have to make a diagnosis that yes, the patient is presenting with this. For example, if a patient is presenting with a chronic illness and weight loss, so what will be the problem? There will be anovulation, there will be amenorrhea. So what is the problem with the illness? The diagnosis can be any malignancy or it may be tuberculosis, which is very common in low socioeconomic status. So you need to evaluate this history very nicely. Coming to the pubic hair pattern, if there is absent pubic hair or very sparse pubic hair, then it may point to androgen insensitivity syndrome. I will come in detail later on. Menarche and menstrual history. If the mothers and sisters have delayed menarche, the younger sister will have delayed menarche. So the constitutional delay of the growth and puberty should be taken into account. Cyclical pain patient presents with or without pressure symptoms. Then you have to think about outflow tract obstruction or Mullerian agenesis. If the patient presents with palpitation, cold intolerance, diarrhea or constipation, yes, you have to exclude the hypothyroidism. If the patient has loss of smell, it may point to a Calumet syndrome. If there is normal physical examination finding, there may be hypogonadotropic hypogonadism or Mullerian agenesis or mosaic Turner. If the patient has male pattern type balding, hirsutism or acne, then you have to think of congenital adrenal hyperplasia, polycystic ovarian syndrome, Cushing's disease or ovarian neoplasm producing the male hormones. Signs of Turner's, we all know, typical signs of Turner, we all know. If the patient is abnormally thin, then you have to exclude anorexia nervosa and bulimia. Galactorrhea, headache, visual disturbance, typical sign of hyperprolactinemia. So you have to read about the pituitary tumor. So amenorrhea with absent secondary sexual characteristics, what are the cause? That is hypergonadotropic hypogonadism, and the problem lies in the ovaries, the functioning of the ovaries, and the most common we all know that is gonadal dysgenesis. There may be FSH receptor defect, ovary is normal, but the receptor for FSH is not functioning normally. So even if there is a normal FSH or LH, it is not getting good response on the ovarian receptors. Pure gonadal dysgenesis, yes. Partial deletion of X chromosome, sex chromosome mosaicism, environmental and therapeutic ovarian toxins, and 17 hydroxy alpha hydroxylase deficiency in excess individuals. All are these causes of ovarian hypofunction resulting in hypergonadotropic hypogonadism. Coming to the cause of hypogonadotropic hypogonadism, we all know this lies in the hypothalamus and pituitary. Yes. And if there's abnormal pelvic examination, what do you mean by abnormal pelvic examination? This means that when you do the per abdominal per vaginal examination, you will not find a normal vagina or uterus or the ovaries. You may find the presence of testis, absent vagina. So this alarms you for some enzymatic deficiency like 5-alpha reductase deficiency with a different genetic sex, that is XY. The most important short note which comes is gonadal dysgenesis. So what is this? You all know this is most common cause of primary amenorrhea, and in these patients, if you go for evaluation of FSH and LH, it will be raised, and if you go for karyotypic assay, there will be karyotypic abnormalities. And the most classical form is Turner syndrome, that is structurally abnormal X chromosome. There may be mosaicism of Turner syndrome. What do you mean mosaicism? That in some of the lines there will be 46XX, and in some of the lines there will be 46XO. So there will be mixed pattern. That is known as mosaicism. That is not typical Turner syndrome. Pure gonadal dysgenesis means there will be 46XX or 46XY karyotype, but the gonads will be very much streaked, and the others are gonadotropin receptor inactivity mutations. So how will you differentiate between the classical Turner variant, that is mosaicism, true gonadal dysgenesis, and mixed dysgenesis on the basis of phenotype, gonad, height, somatic stigmata, and karyotype is very well shown here. And you can see that in all of these, the typical phenotype is female except mixed gonadal dysgenesis, that is ambiguous genitalia. The gonads are streaky in all the variants except mixed gonadal dysgenesis, where may be streaked ovaries or streaked testes. The height is short. In case of classical Turner's, you all know Turner's variant, it may be short or normal, but in true gonadal dysgenesis, the height will be tall, and in mixed gonadal dysgenesis, there will be short height. The other stigmata, there will be classical features of Turner syndrome. We all know. We come to this. Turner's variant, they may be present or not. True gonadal dysgenesis, there is no classical features externally, and in mixed gonadal dysgenesis, there may be male or female features externally. Karyotype, we all know. Turner's, that is XO. Mosaicism of Turner, some XX, some XO. In pure, there may be XX or XY, and mixed, there will be both XX and XY. Turner syndrome, we all know. The normal ovarian development is failure, and there will be accelerated atresia of the follicles, which leads to amenorrhea, and this leads to streak ovaries. The ovaries, like, there may be thin fibrotic type ovaries that you can see in ultrasound scan, and when you go for karyotyping, that classical 45XO pattern will be there, and in case of mosaicism, you know that. So any short, slowly growing, sexually infantile girl has Turner syndrome until proved otherwise because of high prevalence of this disorder, that is 1 in 2500 newborn phenotypic females. We can see very nicely from this picture the classical presentation of Turner syndrome. The female has a very short height. It is not beyond 145 centimeter. Physical examination from head to toe, the web neck, cubitus valgus means increased carrying angle, short foot metacarpal, there will be low set ears, low hairline, high arched palate, there will be hearing loss, there will be cardiac abnormalities. The most important, we all know that coarctation of aorta. There may be renal problems like ectopic kidney, horseshoe-shaped kidney, double ureters, and they may present with autoimmune problems like thyroiditis, diabetes mellitus, or celiac disease. So whenever these patients comes, we have to evaluate every organ, the heart, the kidney, the thyroid, ears, for any abnormalities. So what are the things you will go for? Echocardiography at diagnosis, and by the age of 21 to 15 years, every 5 years, more often if abnormal. Ultrasound of the KUB region, once if normal, every 3 to 5 years if abnormal. Thyroid function test every 1 to 2 years. Complete blood count, fasting blood sugar, lipid profile, renal function, liver function test every 2 years. Anti-endomysial antibody for celiac disease at diagnosis, and audiometry at diagnosis, and once during teen or young adulthood every 10 years if normal. So these basic investigations should be there in patient diagnosed with Turner syndrome. So you have to write it down. Coming to the treatment, what are the different agents with which you treat? The basic thing is this is a girl of primary amenorrhea, and the short height is there. So we have to go with the exogenous growth hormone, and the dose is 3.375 milligram per kg divided into 7 daily doses, and it starts after the age of 14 years because the bone age should be released. Okay, and it should be weekly dose. Exogenous estrogen to promote the sexual maturation, you have to give it, and it should be also started at days greater than 12 years of age and less than 15 years of age. And it may be transdermal estradiol form, that is 0.05 milligram per kg per milligram per day, or conjugated estrogens orally daily, which may range from zero point 0.3 to 0.625 milligram. It should be followed by progesterone for withdrawal bleeding. Otherwise, there will be endometrial hyperplasia. That will be 5 to 10 milligram of hydroxyprogesterone acetate, or it may be in micronized form. So you have to add progesterone every 12 to 14 days, every 1 to 2 months. Oocyte donation, possibility of our pregnancy, but the risk of death during pregnancy is increased as much as 100-fold, primarily due to aortic dissection and rupture. So counseling is very much important. Yes, even if you become pregnant by oocyte donation, the chances of death sudden due to aortic dissection or rupture is very high. So you have to discourage this patient to become pregnant, and the best way for pregnancy is that you have to go for adoption or surrogacy with a oocyte donor. So Turner syndrome should be considered a relative contraindication of pregnancy, as I've told you. Pure gonadal dysgenesis, we all know the patient will be phenotypically female, karyotype will be normal, XX or XY. There may be sexual infantilism, patient present with primary amenorrhea, and the height will be normal. If the XY features, it also known as severe syndrome due to mutation in SRY gene at Y chromosome. And mixed gonadal dysgenesis, the XY karyotype is most common. There will be ambiguous genitalia. There will be a strict gonad on one side, malformed testis on the opposite side, and the mutation in SRY gene is occasionally present. Now, coming to the congenital lipoid adrenal hyperplasia, that is known as congenital adrenal hyperplasia. As we can see from this enzymatic pathway, the cholesterol is not able to convert into pregnenolone. So what is happening, that there will be hyponatremia, hypokalemia. Okay, this is due to mineralocorticoid deficiency, and the patient will be sexually infantile. The chromosomal feature will be excess. The patient of secondary congenital adrenal hyperplasia may acquire some of the sexual characteristics at puberty. So how will you treat this patient? By with the mineralocorticoid or glucocorticoid replacement is important. Coming to the 17-hydroxylase or 17-20 desmolase deficiency, you can see from this enzymatic pathway that pregnenolone is not converting into 17-hydroxypregnenolone, and progesterone is not converting into 17-hydroxyprogesterone. So this is by both enzymes, 17-hydroxylase enzyme and 17-20 desmolase enzyme. So what is happening? All of the cholesterol is converting into aldosterone. Okay, so there is no formation of cortisol and the steroids. So there will be primary amenorrhea, no sexual characteristics, female phenotype will be there, but due to increase in mineralocorticoid, there will be increase in the sodium and there will be hypertension. Okay, there will be potassium loss, and these patients have a gonadotropin levels raised due to deficiency of sex steroid. There will be increase in FSH and LH levels. Treatment is you have to go with a hormone replacement therapy with cortisol and the estrogen and the progesterone. Coming to the aromatase deficiency, you all know that aromatase enzymes help in the conversion of androgen to the estrogen. So it is an autosomal recessive abnormality. So what is happening? Most of the mothers of the affected children become virilized during pregnancy. Why? What is happening? Androgen is accumulating, and through the placenta it enter into the female blood, and then there will be increase in the androgen in the mother, and mother also become virilized. So at birth the female child will have clitoromegaly. There will be posterolabial fusion due to increased action of the androgen, and at puberty there will be no breast development, there will be primary amenorrhea, worsening of virilization, absent growth spurt, delayed bone age, and multicystic ovaries. So treatment is You have to give the estrogen to improve the ovarian and the skeletal abnormalities. So supplementation should be started minimally in the childhood and increase at the puberty. Coming to the other cause, that is LHRS, LH and FSH receptor mutation. This is very rare and it is mainly due to the deletion or missense mutations in the gene in both the LH and FSH receptors. Now the second common is hypogonadotropic hypogonadism, where we all know that hypothalamus fails to secrete adequate amounts of gonadotropin releasing hormone, and pituitary disorder associated with inadequate production or release of pituitary gonadotropins is present. What is the most common cause of hypothalamic amenorrhea is the constitutional delay. That is delay in gonadotropin releasing hormone thus generating reactivation. Family history is most common. Usually these patients are short for their chronological age. They are normal for their bone age. And when you do all the investigations, including the karyotype, it will be normal. And diagnosis is confirmed retrospectively when a spontaneous activation of HPO axis occurs. It is management is very difficult because you have to differentiate between hypogonadotropic hypogonadism from constitutional delay. So better to start the treatment with low dose estrogen until the puberty starts. Kalamal syndrome, it is one of the most common cause, most rare cause of hypogonadotropic hypogonadism. It is resulting from the X-linked mutations or deletion of short arm of X chromosome, 22 chromosome band 3. There will be a problem in anosmin 1 protein that is known as CAL gene, and there will be hypoplastic or absent olfactory sulci in rhinocephalon. There will be syndrome of anosmia and amenorrhea. Other features may be cerebral ataxia, there will be hearing loss, epilepsy, infertility, poor secondary sexual characteristics, midline facial defect like cleft lip, cleft palate, insufficient pulsatile secretion of GnRH, deficiency of LH and FSH. So treatment is cyclical estrogen progesterone restores the menstruation, ovulation induction with exogenous FSH and LH. So that when you start the treatment, these patients will respond very nicely to your treatment. Coming to the genetic disorder which results in hypogonadotropic hypogonadism, that is 5-alpha reductase deficiency or gonadotropin releasing hormone receptor mutation or follicular stimulating hormone deficiency. 5-alpha reductase deficiency, it is basically with a postgraduate. It is not for you, but you need to know what is the problem. Basically, the presentation is XY. The virilization occurs at puberty. Testis may be present. There will be no gonadotropin level, and the most common differential diagnosis is androgen insensitivity syndrome. In these cases, breasts do not develop at puberty, and when you examine the gonadotropin levels, it will be low. Male differentiation of urogenital sinus and external genitalia doesn't occur in this case because testosterone is not converted into dihydrotestosterone, and the normal internal male genitalia is present. Male pattern, hair growth, muscle mass, voice deepen. Genetic disorders, the gonadotropin releasing hormone receptor mutations results from abnormal GnRH function. 70% of these may be sporadic with normal olfaction. Coming to the FSH hormone deficiency, it may result in decrease in FSH but increase in LH, and there will be low serum androgen level because we know that FSH stimulated follicle development is prerequisite for thecal cell and androgen production. So this means this is to amenorrhea. Coming to the second group, that is amenorrhea with secondary sexual characteristics and anatomic abnormalities. The most common is androgen insensitivity syndrome. I will discuss with this. Two hermaphrodites, absent endometrium, Mullerian anomalies divided into imperforate hymen or transvertebral septum or Mayer-Rokitansky-Kuchenhauser syndrome, secondary to infections like PID, IUD related, or tuberculosis or schistosomiasis. So next important thing is cryptomenorrhea, that is concealed menses. That is outflow obstruction to the menstrual blood. The most common cause is imperforate hymen, followed by transverse vaginal septum. There may be isolated vaginal agenesis or isolated cervical agenesis. Clinical feature will be of periodic pain, lower abdomen, with or without retention of the urine. And what will the investigations you go for? That is ultrasound and MRI. How will you differentiate? That is most important question by the clinician. That how will you differentiate between the imperforate hymen and transverse vaginal septum? Both these patients will present with cyclical pain abdomen. There may be lump per abdomen, but when you do examination, the genital structures, and we tell the patient to cuff, what is happening in imperforate hymen? There will be bulging and bluish discoloration of the hymen, but that is not present in case of transverse vaginal septum. We should know the classification of Mullerian duct abnormalities. That is a separate chapter. I am not going into detail, but you should know it may be hypoplasia, unicornate, didelphus, bicornuate, septate, arcuate, or dithyl drug-related problems. So what is the management? Management depends upon the presenting feature. As we can see, if there's an imperforate hymen, what do you do? If there's a bulging membrane, so you do give a cruciate incision and drain the collected blood and give the antibiotics, counsel the patient, and reevaluate the patient after 6 weeks. If there is a transverse vaginal septum, so the best thing are those who are diagnosed early, because we all know that if the patient presents late, there will be chances of development of endometriosis, adhesions in the uterus and the ovaries, and also in the pouch of Douglas. So as early diagnosis is much better, and then you have to cut this vaginal septum. This is important, and then vaginoplasty if required. If the vagina is absent or short, you have to go for progressive dilatation, usually successful in making it functional. Now, one of the most important cause of primary amenorrhea we all see in the OPD is MRKH syndrome. The female karyotype will be normal. The incidence is 1 in 5,000, and 10 to 15% of the patient in primary amenorrhea present with this. They have normal breast and Tanner staging of pubic and axillary hair. The external genitalia looks normal. Testosterone levels is also normal. But when you go for the ultrasound, there will be absent uterus, cervix, and the upper vagina without features of cryptomenoria. The ovaries will be normal. 10% have functional island of endometrium may be present. So there will be two forms. Type A is symmetrical muscular rudimentary uterus, normal fallopian tubes. Type B will be asymmetrical rudimentary uterus with absent or hypoplastic tubes. There may be associated anomalies like urologic abnormalities, which is 15 to 40% predominantly present, and or skeletal deformities. Diagnosis by ultrasound, as we all know, or MRI, which is more accurate. We have to go for karyotype. In intravenous pyelography, very much important to rule out the renal anomalies. The X-ray, laparoscopic, if Mullerian remnants. So how you go for management? By vaginoplasty. If the patient doesn't get ready for vaginoplasty, then IVF and surrogacy, if possible, if wants to become pregnant. So this vaginoplasty, the type and different methods, you do not need to go into detail, but the most important you all know is McIndoe reed. That is, you have to use a skin graft using the solid mold, or you can go for vaginoplasty with using amnion graft or peritoneal graft. Okay, so these two are most common. You should know. Rest is the postgraduate levels. So one of the most important question asked is what is the difference between androgen insensitivity syndrome and the MRKH syndrome. So here you can see the the breast formation is almost normal in both the cases. But in case of MRK syndrome, there will be normal stroma and the glandula. But in case of androgen insensitivity syndrome, the breast contains maximum fatty tissue. There will be no stroma and very minimal glandular tissue because of the absent estrogen. Coming to the pubic and axillary hair, there will be absent in androgen insensitivity but normal in MRKH. The vagina will be blind in both the cases. Uterus will be absent in both the cases. The gonads in androgen insensitivity, there may be testes. In MRKH, ovaries are normal, present at normal side. The testosterone in androgen insensitivity syndrome will be male range, and in case of MRKH, it will be female range. In karyotype, we all know XS in MRKH and XY in case of androgen insensitivity syndrome. So as we have already discussed it, so the question is very important for you at this short note and examinations. As you can see, this is a classical female which presents as androgen insensitivity syndrome. So what is the treatment? The psychological counseling is very much important to the patient and the parents. After puberty is reached, go for removal of the testes because the chances of development into malignancy is very high. And in these cases, reproduction is not possible, so adoption is a choice. Now coming to the true hermaphroditism, it is maybe XY and mosaic genotypes. Both male and the female gonad tissue is present in these cases, and external genitalia is usually ambiguous. Breast development is present. In 15% of the excess true hermaphrodite, there will be XRY translocation, and in 10% of excess true hermaphrodites, they have chromosomal bichromosomal mosaicism within the gonads. Now coming to the third group, that is amenorrhea with secondary sexual characteristics and normal pelvic anatomy. Everything is normal, okay, but the patient presents with amenorrhea. So what are the causes? So the most important we all deal with in our OPD is polycystic ovarian syndrome, hyperprolactinemia, primary ovarian insufficiency, altered hypothalamic gonadotropin releasing hormone secretion, weight loss, too much of dieting, anorexia nervosa, exercise, stress induced disorder, and obesity. So this comes as a short question. You all know the causes of ovarian failure. It may be due to genetic problem, that is Turner's or Turner's mosaic, FMR1 gene permutations, iatrogenic causes like radiation chemotherapy, surgical damage to the ovarian blood supply, or removal of the ovaries. We all know that infection, tuberculosis, or mumps, autoimmune lymphocytic ophoritis, galactosemia, Perol syndrome, idiopathic. So these are very rare, but yes, the causes of ovarian failure is there. Pituitary hypothalamic lesions like craniopharyngioma, xerminoma, tubercular granuloma, sarcoid granuloma, dermoid cyst. And we all know that pituitary, the most common presentation will be Sehan syndrome. There may be adenomas like prolactinoma, Cushing disease or acromegaly. There may be pituitary infarction or diabetic vasculitis. Altered hypothalamic gonadotropin releasing hormone secretion. There may be anorexia nervosa, exercise-induced, stress-induced, pseudocyesis, malnutrition, chronic disease I have already discussed with you, hyperprolactinemia, thyroid dysfunction. And if the estrogen levels are normal, there may be obesity, there may be hypoandrogenism, there may be granulosa cell tumor or idiopathic. So they may present with amenorrhea primary and secondary. We have to find out the etiology. The complex physical examination is a stepwise approach for diagnostic evaluation, and we have to restore the ovulatory cycles wherever possible. We have to restore the estrogen deficiency, and psychological support and counseling required if there is a genetic problem. So this is all about my presentation, and some of the questions I have made. Tell me the answer. What is the sequence of development of puberty in girls? Anybody? A, B, C, or D? Yes. Anyone?
Ma'am B.
Yes. That is first is growth spurt. This is followed by thilarche, pubarche, and then within 2 to 3 years, menarche. Now, how much fold of increases of death in pregnant lady with Turner syndrome following ovum donation? If you are attentive to the class, then you can answer this. Yes, it was there in my slide. It was there in my presentation. Can you tell me? The most problem is, you know that death due to coarctation of aorta and rupture. So that is 100 times. Okay, risk of death in pregnant lady. So it is one of the contraindication for pregnancy. This is the answer. Now, tell me the third. A girl present with primary amenorrhea with grade 5 thelarchy, grade 2 pubarchy, no axillary hair. What is the diagnosis? Yes. Anyone? I have discussed this very nicely. Patient is tall.
Ma'am,
Never.
A.
Yes. Patient is tall.
A, ma'am. A.
Well developed breast. The axillary and pubic hair are very less. And
A.
when you go for the genotype, that will be XY. क्या होगा?
A.
Yes, testicular feminizing syndrome. So this will come as a short note and you have to write every finding. Okay. Now, most common cause of ambiguous genitalia in a female child.
A.
Yes. So you have to write down the congenital acquired both. Congenital adrenal hyperplasia or acquired adrenal hyperplasia. Vertical fusion defect can result in what will be the answer? I have elaborated. ऊपर से नीचे जब तुम्हारा सेप्टम होता है, ऊपर क्या होता है? मुलेरियन पार्ट और नीचे होता है यूरोजेनिटल साइनस. Okay, so when the Mullerian bulb meets the urogenital sinus, there will be a septum. Okay, so that septum becomes canalized and there will be patent outflow tract. But when the septa remains the same, that will lead to the transverse vaginal septum. Okay, I've discussed you the difference between the imperforate hymen and transverse vaginal septum. So vertical diffusion defect, one of the common presentation is transverse vaginal septum. Thank you. So any question you can ask me, because primary amenorrhea is a very huge topic. You have to learn it very nicely. But yes, the physiological cause of amenorrhea, the pathological cause of amenorrhea, what are the different WHO classification, group 1, group 2, 3, 4, you all know that group 1 is hypogonadism, group 2 is eugonadism, group 3 is hypogonadism, and group 4 is hyperprolactinemia. You should all know. And then what are the examples of every compartment? Okay, this is very much important. Next question is short note about gonadal dysgenesis, that is known as ovarian failure, Turner syndrome and its mosaicism. Short note will come. What are the different type of gonadal dysgenesis? Pure gonadal dysgenesis or mixed gonadal dysgenesis or Turner syndrome. How will you differentiate? It will come as a short note. Then androgen insensitivity syndrome, very important questions asked by many of us. It may come as a short note. You have to keep it in mind. And what are the causes of hypothalamic amenorrhea? So you all know the different types of hypothalamic amenorrhea. I cannot take one class and cover everything, but in short, I can say that hypothalamic amenorrhea, the most common is constitutional delay. This is followed by stress induced, then exercise. The athletes who are doing so much of running and exercise, they have hypothalamic amenorrhea. Why? Because of increase in the cortisol secretion, and this leads to decrease in the release of GnRH. So pulse becomes less. When the GnRH pulse becomes less, there will be decrease in the LS and FSH frequency, and this releases with amenorrhea. So they mostly present with the primary or secondary, depending upon when they have started they are running in the sport activities. So severe sport, they are athlete, they are called as athlete. Then the young girls, the anorexia nervosa or bulimia, so they have more commonly present with this. So you have to see what is the feature of the weight loss, what are the other endocrine parameters, and you have to compare. So this hypothalamic category is different thing. Now coming to the, if everything is normal, no anatomical defect, no problems in the genetic part, and they have normal secondary sexual characteristics. So the examples you all know, the most common is polycystic ovarian syndrome. You have to write it down, and the others are the stress induced or the pregnancy physiologically or lactation. They are already secondary amenorrhea, and others are the receptors type of problems. So depending upon the compartment, you have to make a short note and you have to present like this. So you will be asked in the examinations and the treatment. And basic treatment, the estrogen, the growth hormone, the progesterone, you need to know the dose and how early we will start, when to start, you need to know. Rest is not required at all. Okay, so this is all about primary amenorrhea. Any confusion, you can ask me. A good chart is there in the book, that is DC Datta. You can follow that chart. That is very helpful in understanding. So basic understanding is important. Any question? Otherwise, I think we should leave the class. Thank you, everyone. So this is today's class. I hope it is useful for your examination purpose. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.